Chapter 6 in Mathew Desmond's book, Poverty by America, is entitled, How We Buy Opportunity, and is the most important chapter in the whole book. If you can't read the whole book, Chapter 6, How We Buy Opportunity, should be the chapter that all Americans should read if they want to understand racism, discrimination, and poverty in the United States. Chapter 6 describes how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer in the United States of America. In spite of what people think or don't think, economic inequality in the United States is created by design. The design is piecemeal, done little by little, with the agenda hidden at the specific level, but the pattern becomes much more observable when there is perspective. What is not apparent on the ground becomes very apparent when viewed from 20,000 feet. In other words, it's hard to see the forest when one is lost among the trees. In 2020, when 12% of Americans lived in poverty, rich Americans bought more than 310,000 power boats. In 2020, when 12% of the American population lived in poverty, Americans spent over $100 billion on their pets and over $550 billion on leisure travel, down from $723 billion the previous year owing to COVID-19. In the United States, where 12% of the population lives in poverty, our cars are bigger than everyone else's in the whole wide world. In 2020, when 12% of the American population lived in poverty and hundreds of thousands of Americans are homeless, millions of Americans lived in homes bigger than any place else on the planet. Americans have houses big enough that 3 newly built English homes could fit into the average new American home. In the United States, where 12% of the population lives in poverty, more than 1 in 8 American families own property besides their primary residence, including second homes and timeshares. 12% of the American population lives in poverty. The poor are excluded from middle and upper class American life because those with money privatize their experience in gated communities and country clubs and zoning codes that exclude poor people from their lives. Meanwhile, public parks, public facilities, public schools are left to disintegrate because the wealthy can buy their own exclusivity and don't have to associate with the hoi polloi. As people accumulate more money, they become less dependent on public goods and in turn less interested in supporting them. And if the rich and political class get their way through tax breaks and other means, personal fortunes grow while public goods in the commons are allowed to deteriorate. As public housing, public education, and public transportation become poorer, they become increasingly then, almost exclusively, used only by the poor themselves. Zoning laws and private accommodations protect people with money from the poor. The rich protecting themselves from the poor is the American way, not just practiced, but admired and aspired to. What private accommodations do you enjoy so you don't have to associate with the hoi polloi?